So, hello and welcome to the latest podcast from BundesSpeaker, the German football podcast from fresh off the Gegenpress. I'm Ali Haggis. I'm here again with Axel today. As always, got our little tandem going on, our German football tandem. We've had a productive week, I think, at the site. We've had the Spanish section launched. Just waiting on a couple of pieces from our writers there. We've got a couple of things going on in the German section. So, we've been using the international break wisely rather than just sort of watching England bore us senseless or, I don't know, Sweden win.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Okay.
Twice as well.
They've won twice already. Okay.
Twice.
Well, England have got a nice little away trip to Slovenia tonight, which
Ugh.
could be, I mean, Kevin Campbell's dropped out, which is kind of sad because that would have made the game more interesting for me.
Mm.
But I guess we'll have to watch England sort of struggle to a 2-0 win again, and then we'll all move on with our lives and await the return of Bundesliga at the weekend, which is what we're all really excited for.
Oh yes.
Yeah, no one really knows what's going to happen this weekend. With Schalke getting their first win just before the season sort of stopped again, so we'll see how that plays out. Anyway, Axel's suggestion for today's podcast was for us to talk a little bit about ourselves, which I liked as an idea, but we couldn't really think of a way of doing it without sounding like massive egotists.
We are though.
So, I mean, we are, that is true, but we didn't want to sound like it on the podcast.
You might not be, but I am like the biggest arrogant egoistic.
I mean, the way you sign off all your articles does reveal that to a certain extent.
A bit, yeah.
Anyway, so we thought of a different way of doing it, which was to show you a little bit of our interests and how we go about things and what gets us interested in German football. So we're both studying at university. We're both interested in history and sport. So cultural history is a big thing for us. So we thought today that we would have a look at a couple of clubs, why they were interesting for us, why we were looking at them. We thought that might give you a little bit of an insight into what we are like, what we're interested in, but also into a couple of the clubs that, well, we've both picked second division clubs actually. So clubs that are maybe less off the beaten or more off the beaten track, less well known in English speaking parts of the world, and give you a little bit of their history, their successes, and that sort of thing. So without further ado, I'll throw the ball to Axel, and he's going to kick us off with a little bit of a look at Eintracht Braunschweig and why he's interested in that, and a bit of a history of the club.
Yeah, thank you. So as a few of you might know, I actually do study cultural history at the university in Sweden. So I'm very interested in most things historical, and especially German history, of course, as well. I'm like a Tudorphiliac. I love Germany. So and therefore, as a Swede, the city of Braunschweig is very interesting because there's a lot of things in Swedish history that have occurred in Braunschweig. For example, the Swedes conquered Braunschweig in the 30 Years' War, and a few Swedish kings have since actually studied in Braunschweig at university. So and right now there are two Swedes in the Braunschweig lineup, or at least one in the lineup and one on the bench. But and so for Swede, Braunschweig has always been, at least for Swede who likes history, Braunschweig has always been interesting to look at, and in many ways very cool club. And it is a very cool club. Founded in 1895 as a cricket club actually, as a football and cricket club of course. And they were one of the first teams to win Bundesliga in the 60s. They won Bundesliga in 67, which makes them more successful in Bundesliga than, for example, Schalke, I think, by Leverkusen, Frankfurt, of course, as well, and a few other teams. Lots of other teams. There are quite a few big clubs in Germany that had never won Bundesliga.
Schalke have won they won the German division, but before it became the Bundesliga.
Frankfurt as well.
Won it. I think they won it 6 times in the 30s.
Frankfurt won, so yeah, okay, fair enough.
But yeah, but they haven't won it since it became the Bundesliga. So yeah, that's one of the black marks on Schalke's record. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Schalke and Leverkusen are probably the biggest ones who have never won Bundesliga. But Braunschweig have won, and they were in kind of a bunch of teams who won Bundesliga in the 60s. 1860 Munich won, as you might know, Cologne won the first edition of Bundesliga in 1963, and Braunschweig had lots of really good German players and have often though played boring football according to some sources. But nowadays they've in the last 10 years they've been like yo-yoing from the first division to the second division and up and down, up and down, up and down. Whenever they find themselves worthy of rising, they have risen, and when they play a bad season, they've been relegated, as most teams. And but they've never, well, not in the last 10 years, they haven't been relegated further. So they've stayed in the Zweite Bundesliga, where they've continue to build. And I think this shows that the club itself has a very good administration. It's very, very well run, and the way they've say come back since their last relegation a few years ago is rather remarkable. You see quite a few clubs, like when they get relegated, like Paderborn, of course, or Duisburg, or Rostock, they just fall, and that hasn't happened with Braunschweig. I think that's a very, very good thing to see. It's and yeah, and this season, which is one of the reasons why I picked them, this season they are one of the clubs who will most probably get promoted to Bundesliga. They've been
They're
really,
top at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, looking good.
And it's looking very good. They played some great football from time to time, almost every game, to be honest. And the first game I watched them play this season was at home against Nuremberg, when they won, I think, 6-1 against Nuremberg, which and Nuremberg should be a contender for promotion as well, but they've been horrible so far.
Yeah.
But and the Swede, one of the Swedes who are at the moment in Braunschweig, Christopher Niemann, he scored a goal in that game, and it was his debut game, so very good for him. And so yeah, in many ways, as a Swede, Braunschweig, and at the moment as well, I think Braunschweig is a very, very cool city and club, and especially for me as historically interested and knowledgeable man, Braunschweig is really, really interesting.
Yeah. I think Braunschweig were the first German team to introduce shirt sponsorship, weren't they? I think that was that was one of their famous things. They had Jägermeister on their shirts famously in the I think that was in the 70s.
73, yeah.
Yeah, 73. Yeah, so that's another sort of milestone that they achieved, sort of opening that door for clubs to have things on their shirts. So.
Yeah, no idea whether that's a positive thing or not, though. But yeah, it's an achievement, positive or negative, to decide.
Well, it's working out for Hansa Rostock. I don't know if you saw that news this week. Hansa Rostock have introduced a new sponsorship scheme where companies can sponsor various different things across the spectrum of the entire club, sort of from anything that, I don't know, I can't even remember what it starts from, but like shorts, shirts, and like things on the scoreboard at various points in the game and stuff like that, and various costs and things like that. So for a third division club, they've made a lot of money. I think it was 70,000 euros in the last 6 months from these little mini sponsorship agreements, which is pretty effective. So I think you have to say it was a positive move, but yeah, whether it goes too far, I don't know. But yeah, that's an iconic shirt though. That yellow Braunschweig with Jägermeister on is one of those that it's one of those that you feel like should be probably is a collector's item. For lots of good reasons. Yeah. It's not quite so iconic these days. The yellow and blue is still pretty rare. You don't find many playing in those colours, but Seat on the front sort of makes everything a bit more boring. So
this is kind of a myth about Braunschweig and the city of Braunschweig, how they got the yellow and blue color.
Yeah.
Sweden.
Yeah, true. There you go. So many links.
That's a theory, but it might be true. It's it kind of it's it could be true. It should be true. It's relevant and as the Swedes more or less founded and now they Braunschweig. So it could be. Yeah, it could be. Especially the football scene.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you. So there's a little insight into Axel's mind. Thankfully, sort of, not too much about him, mostly about, mostly about Eintracht Braunschweig. Um, so I'm in fourth year at the moment, studying German, and part of my course this year is to write a dissertation, as I'm sure many of you are aware. It's one of the fun uh, parts of uni, as everyone knows. Writing that many words in a year is sort of daunting. So yeah, I'm going to talk about something that's interested me and might come up in my dissertation potentially, which is Dynamo Dresden and the old GDR league. Um, so I was just going to run through a little bit of their history, which is slightly different. It follows a different path. The old East Germany, West Germany clash. Braunschweig obviously winning Bundesliga in the Bundesrepublik rather than in the German Democratic Republic. So Dynamo Dresden, one of these teams that had a number of name changes, amalgamations, changes to the team, changes to the badge throughout the 50s and 60s, and didn't really have one solid identity. They went from sort of the top division of the East German League all the way down into the fourth division, sort of the regional leagues. They had various other clubs were sort of forced to join them. Various players decided to leave them and headed to the west before the wall shut that option off. So until 1969, they were one of a number of East German clubs that were sort of all over the place, not doing a lot. They won the title once, but basically everyone won the title once in that sort of early years of the GDR and how East Germany football developed in those years. Um, so the 70s brought slightly more solidity and a lot more success. So as early as 1970-71, they won their second title and their second Pokal in the same season, and that made them the first ever double winners in the GDR. So there's a milestone for Dynamo that would last. That's a record that they wouldn't lose. Um, they at various points held the most number of titles. I think six before Dynamo Berlin, the state sponsored team, if you like, came in and took that record from them. But yeah, this double win in 1970 and 71 meant that no one was ever going to take that from them. No one else could ever be the first double winner. Um, and then they moved into the European Cup in the 70s as East Germany began to integrate more into the world view. And East German teams began to develop properly, and football began to become a serious thing there. So they started competing, reached a number of quarterfinals, including an incredibly famous one in 1973 against the mighty Bayern Munich. It was the first clash between an East and a West German domestic side. Um, and everyone expected the superstars from Bayern to absolutely thrash them. Obviously, all the money, all the superstars, even in those days, Bayern were the team to beat in Germany, and obviously Dynamo coming from the, backward communist East, as everyone from the West was looking at it. You look at that and you think, well, this is going to be easy. But Bayern squeezed through after winning 4-3 and drawing 3-3. I mean, there's a lot of goals in that game. I kind of have to question what the defenses were doing, but 7-6 on aggregate is not a bad game to watch. I wish I could have been there really, but yeah. So that another first for Dynamo there, um, and then later in the 70s they had a little bit of trouble with three of their players. So Gerd Weber, pretty famous name in German football. He tried to use a match in Italy to escape into the West. He had a deal with FC Köln that they would sign him if he defected, and he was caught along with Peter Kotter and Matthias Müller. All three were Dresden players, and they were all banned from playing above regional level. Weber was banned for life, from all sport and sentenced to a short prison sentence as well, I think. And after losing those three players, they never really had the same impact. This was alongside the preferential treatment which Dynamo Berlin received. So the head of the Stasi, the secret police in East Germany, was a huge BFC Dynamo Berlin fan, and refereeing decisions were occasionally questionable or often questionable. Results were sometimes teams were pressurized into making sure results went the right way, shall we say. So Dynamo never had that same level of competitiveness. They still, I think Dynamo teams are associated with the secret police, so they still probably received some sort of preferential treatment, but not to the same level as the beloved Dynamo Berlin. So they sort of lacked that level of competitiveness, and in the 80s they began losing out, and their crown of most league titles slipped away to Dynamo Berlin. Um, they faced, it was harder to be successful in Europe as well. They were often knocked out at the quarter-final stages or earlier. They felt they had a curse actually at one point. They thought they were cursed to not go any further than that. In 1986, they did actually get to that stage again, but they were knocked out despite leading at half-time. And then one of their players, Frank Lippmann, and a load of other fans defected whilst they were away in the West. So that was another black moment in the club's history. Well, depends on which way you're looking at it, but um, from a GDR government point of view, it was certainly a black moment. But Dresden have this history of being a massive club, and after the reunification of Germany, they returned. They were successful. They got to the semi-final of the UEFA Cup, or the last four of the UEFA Cup, and they won the league in 89 and 90. So they came back with a bang just around the time when Germany was reuniting. But as soon as the wall came down, pretty much the second it came down, Matthias Sammer, you remember him? The Bayern Munich, I think he's currently the manager at Bayern Munich, as in the director of football for English speakers. Certainly a very big character at Bayern Munich. He was transferred pretty much the second the wall came down from Dresden to Bayern, um, or to the West, sorry, and later went on to be a massive star for Bayern Munich. Um, so since the wall came down, Dresden, along with basically every other East German team, have had this massive struggle with existence. In 1995, they had their license revoked and had to drop down to the amateur leagues. In 2004, they returned, and they basically broke every attendance record in the amateur leagues along the way. So their fans stuck with them, and to this day, they are one of the best supported teams in East Germany for sure. If you compare them with the Bundesliga, it's obviously not quite so high, but last season when they won the third division, they were getting average crowds of around 27, 28,000, which, considering most teams in the third division are struggling to get 10, was pretty impressive. They spent most of the last sort of 10, 15 years bouncing around between the third division, the second division, just about managed to avoid going bankrupt in 2008, and it's all been a bit sort of almost but not quite. And this season they're back in the second division. The last time they were in the second division, actually, they got promoted against Osnabrück, which in my notes I've written as oh, lots of stars K, because as a Preußen Münster fan, I don't really want to write down the word Osnabrück. Um, but so yeah, so I had to drop that in that they won via the playoff in 2011, but they've returned to the second Bundesliga. They're currently sitting in I think 11th, so they're doing all right. They've started well, and it's really exciting to see a club the size of Dynamo, with such an interesting history. There's no way you can sort of look at that timeline and go they've had an easy life, and just sort of a memory of East German football, but at the same time as there's this rise with RB Leipzig and all the discussion around that, it's nice to see there is a traditional East German team also starting to rise, starting to develop again, and hopefully moving in the right direction, because it would be good to see a team that has this record of success in the old East coming through and doing something. I mean, you've got Union Berlin as well in the second division, but other than that, I'm not sure many have really made it. You've got Magdeburg in the third division. Trying to think who else is in there. Yeah, I'm not sure where Erzgebirge is. I'm not sure if that was in the old East. But a lot of East German teams find themselves in the third division. Carl Zeiss Jena, one of the other massive teams from the East German era, are in the fifth division at the moment. Um,
Was it
so um,
Hansa? Has they won? I think first the first edition of the DDR League. I think Hansa also won, and
yes, yeah,
that's what I wrote about in the Hidden Choice of October. And they are now in the third division
yeah,
of Fiddlinger, and they are playing some great football, so they might actually even get
yeah.
promoted.
It's exciting. It's sort of like, 25, 26 years ago, the wall came down, and since like the initial purging almost of all the talented players from the East just went straight to the West because the money they were making was going to be so much better.
Mm.
And you have all these problems with teams being bankrupt as capitalism comes into the East, and they're trying to compete artificially with money, and they're trying to spend money they haven't got, and they're not used to this idea of sponsorship coming from anywhere other than sort of a company or a ministry from the government or whatever. So a lot of a lot of clubs have struggled. And if you look at the list of teams that used to play in the GDR, there's very few recognizable names in there. There's Energie Cottbus are one of them, but I think they're possibly not even in the third division anymore. Um,
No, no, to be honest. I think
no, so
they
they're
got
dropped.
relegated again.
So there's a number of very famous clubs or famous for East German football clubs who just don't exist anymore. So it's nice to see that Dresden are coming back, and I was very excited when they got promoted last year, and it sort of inspired me to have a look at this. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was my mini research topic for this, and I'm thinking of potentially talking about GDR football for my dissertation. It would be a very
Oh,
interesting topic,
wow,
I think.
perfect.
So yeah, that's me. I'm not sure where we go from there. That was all we had planned, wasn't it? So
Yeah. There's actually one more team, and you might have mentioned them, but FSV Zwickau,
oh
now in
yeah,
the Drittliga. They are though playing horribly, and I don't think they've won yet. Um, and yeah, they will probably get relegated once again. But
yeah,
it's still, as I said, it's very nice thing to see these small clubs, even from East Germany, rise in the ranks. It's
yeah,
always good to see other new teams rise and teams not many people know of. That's kind of our job to do to see these not a job but our job at site to see and to realize that, okay, this team is on the rise, and maybe we should recognize them now, so we can claim, um, well, let's say, claim that we start the
yeah.
bandwagon, so to speak.
We were the first ones to jump on.
Yeah, right. That's kind of the thing with being a hipster, and
Yeah,
therefore I think, as you said, well, more or less as you said, I think East German football is kind of the new hipster thing, because it is on the rise.
yeah,
Dresden, Leipzig, of course, even though Leipzig have no history whatsoever, but
yeah,
still, it's from East Germany. Leipzig, Dresden,
yeah.
Rostock, possibly Union Berlin, Hertha Berlin, but they weren't in East Germany. They
No,
were
they
in
were they
West
were
or
in the
Western
West.
Berlin, yeah. And Magdeburg, in third division,
Erzgebirge. I had a look.
Erzgebirge. Yeah, right.
Our was in
Yeah,
Saxony. So yeah,
it's close to Czech border, I think. They are in the Zweite Bundesliga, Zwickau in the Dritte Liga. And even though these clubs like Karlsruhe Jena, of course, are, well,
yeah,
they have of course fallen from grace rather massively. There draw quite a few teams on the rise, and I think that's really interesting, really exciting to see, because I think that's something German football needs. They need this kind of a more more divided Bundesliga. Not
Yeah,
divided when it comes to opinions, etc., etc.
spread.
But widespread, spread thing. But because
Yeah,
now
I
it's like
mean, in the last year, I went and visited a lot of German Bundesliga clubs and second division clubs, but I managed to do 16 of them without really venturing any further east than Munich,
hmm,
which isn't particularly, I mean, that's in the south. And like, if you take out Berlin, obviously that doesn't really count. That was a sort of a separate area, which is why Union have managed to stay reasonably successful because they've got a slightly bigger market than everyone else. But yeah, it would have been nice. Like Dresden and Leipzig are two fantastic cities in the old East, which I'm really excited to visit at some point. Um, and it like this is there's so many debates about East German football and where we're going with it and whether RB Leipzig are any good or whatever. There's so many different themes we can talk about there, but we
hmm,
can talk about them in future weeks. We've got plenty of time to do that. But yeah, it would be nice to see a bit more like diversification, sort of heading in that more northeast corner where you've got the clubs like Dresden, like Chemnitz, and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
yeah, that would be great. But we'll see how it works out.
right, Chemnitz as well,
Yeah,
and I think Hallische FC. They're
yeah,
also from the east, I think. Both those are also in the Bundesliga.
yeah.
So there's two more.
There's potential there. That's what like
There's
that.
potential,
This is
yeah.
what we're seeing, and this
It's,
is what we're hoping will develop. There is potential there that clubs that used to pull in big crowds and be a place for people to go and watch sport and not worry as much about sort of what was going on politically
yeah,
in the GDR and not worry about,
definitely.
you know, things that they were legitimately able to worry about, but on a Saturday they could go and they could watch football and
Yeah. And
it's one of those romantic sort of stories, isn't it?
yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. And I think Magdeburg have got a a run new stadium, and I think Chemnitz they just finished building the new stadium, or it's like more or less finished. And I think it's finished. And it's like very, very nice, very, very new, very fresh. And even I think even Zwickau are also building a new stadium and Ex-Bigau as well. So
yeah,
there are a new breed of modern stadiums in
yeah,
Eastern Germany, along with of course Dresden and Leipzig and Rostock also got a great stadium. So yeah, I mean, there's as I said, there's lots of potential in East Germany.
yeah,
Lots to look out for in the
yeah.
future. I
And
hope.
that can only be good for the competitiveness of not just of the top division, but also of the two below it. The third division is becoming, more and more competitive in its own right. You're not seeing teams going down and straight back up, and
Mm,
the second division, as we're well aware, is completely impossible to predict. I mean, well, completely impossible is a bit of an exaggeration, but
more or
there's
less.
almost impossible. There's a massive gap between where a team could finish and where they do finish. So, but yeah, so I think that's an interesting theme, and it's something that I'm particularly interested in looking at as the weeks go on and as the months go on. I'll be potentially writing more about that. I'm thinking of doing a sort of a throwback Thursday sort of piece most weeks.
Yep.
We'll see if that materializes or not. Depends how busy I am. But it would be really interesting to look at the history of where these German clubs come from and who they are, sort of a profile of what they did this time in the 70s. When they had this massive final against whoever. So like
Mm,
there's so much depth of history to German football, well, as there is with every country, obviously. But we know the most about German football, so we'll talk about that.
mm, definitely.
um, so I think that probably wraps it up for this week.
Yeah.
Unless you've got anything else you want to add.
Um, no, nothing else than just wishing you a happy birthday, as
Oh,
it's
thank
your
you.
birthday tomorrow.
Yes,
So yeah, happy birthday.
this is my birthday podcast. There we go. Look at that.
Oh yeah, right. There.
I spoiled myself with a present of Dynamo Dresden.
Yep.
Um, cool. Yeah. So it's been good again. Hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast. As always, we're looking for your feedback, what we do right, what we do wrong, whether we should talk more, less about this, that. Let us know, give us ideas, give us feedback. We're happy to hear criticism. We're even happier to hear, um, you know, good stuff. So get in touch. If you're wanting to write for us, particularly about Syria or the French League, Ligue 1, that would be fantastic. We're looking for writers in those two areas particularly. But if you have a passion for German football, which we hope you do if you're listening to this, or a particular interest in Spanish football, we would also be excited to hear from you. And there's always a place on our team for people that are passionate about football, passionate about European football particularly. So get in touch. You can find us both on Twitter. I'm at Ali Haggis and Axel is at Millennium Falk. And of course, you can find the site at Fresh Gegenpress and www.freshgegenpress.com. So that's it for today for BundesSpeaker. Thank you for listening and have a fantastic week.